Hi, today I'd like to invite you to watch a short recap of the movie Project Hail Mary. Enjoy! Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps. Ryland Grace wakes inside an automated medical bay, weak, disoriented, and unable to remember his own name, his location, or why robotic arms are keeping him alive. The ship's systems keep him alive, but two nearby crewmates are already dead. Grace cannot identify the bodies, and he realizes he may be the only survivor. Still barely able to stand, he explores the dark vessel and tests its controls. Every corridor confirms that he is completely alone. Navigation displays show a distant star system, while scattered memories identify him as a science teacher named Ryland Grace. A recovered memory explains the crisis. Astronomers discovered that the sun is dimming as mysterious organisms drain away its energy, threatening worldwide cooling and famine. Before the disaster, Grace taught middle school science and preferred a quiet classroom to the academic world he had abandoned. In class, Grace explains science with simple experiments while the outside crisis grows. The memory of his students becomes the first stable part of his identity. Back aboard the ship, each memory helps him operate unfamiliar systems. He slowly understands that this vessel was built around his expertise and launched on a desperate scientific mission. In another flashback, Eva Stratt summons him. Governments have granted her extraordinary authority to coordinate humanity's response, override national interests, and move resources without delay. Stratt recruits Grace because his controversial research suggests life might exist under chemistry unlike Earth's. He reluctantly leaves his classroom for a secure laboratory filled with global specialists. Inside containment, Grace studies a captured cell of the star-eating organism. The team calls it astrophage because it feeds on stellar energy and survives conditions that should destroy life. Repeated tests prove astrophage is alive, incredibly resilient, and capable of storing enormous energy as light. The discovery turns a microscopic threat into a possible interstellar fuel. Grace also confirms that the organism travels between the Sun and Venus along a bright infrared path called the Petrova line. Because astrophage can release its stored energy as thrust, engineers see both a threat and a fuel source powerful enough for interstellar travel. Stratt seals the research behind military security and keeps every government cooperating. Grace works while factories, laboratories, launch sites, and entire supply chains are redirected toward one project. The crucial clue is Tau Ceti. Astrophage has reached that star, yet Tau Ceti is not dimming, so something in that system must be killing or controlling it. Humanity designs Project Hail Mary, a one-way expedition to Tau Ceti. Its crew must identify the natural defense, reproduce it, and send the answer home before Earth's climate collapses. The project expands aboard a carrier-sized industrial base, where specialists assemble the ship, train the crew, and prepare millions of kilograms of astrophage under constant security. Stratt briefs the international team. Every nation must cooperate because failure means decades of cooling, crop losses, famine, political collapse, and mass death across Earth. The mission will carry 3 people in induced coma through years of acceleration. None is expected to return after reaching Tau Ceti and completing the research. 4 small beetle probes will carry scientific data back to Earth, each following an independent route. The crew is expendable, but the solution must survive. Grace becomes the chief astrophage expert and helps train Commander Yao, engineer Ilyukina, and scientist Martin Dubois to operate the laboratory, sampler, and emergency systems. As preparations continue, Grace believes he will remain on Earth. His memories still hide the reason he eventually entered the launch capsule. The Hail Mary leaves the solar system under astrophage power, accelerating toward Tau Ceti while its 3 crew members sleep through forces and years no waking human could endure. During the flight, something goes wrong. Warning lights flash, the ship shakes, and Grace awakens years later with severe amnesia and without the other crew members. He fights through damaged systems and stabilizes the vessel. The work proves he has technical knowledge even when his memory refuses to cooperate. Medical records confirm that Yao and Ilyukina died during the coma. Grace closes their section, suppresses his grief, and continues the mission alone. Grace repairs damaged systems and studies Tau Ceti with the equipment that still works. To continue the biology experiments, he must restore usable gravity. Grace converts the Hail Mary into a giant centrifuge, spinning connected sections until the laboratory regains enough gravity for microscopes, chemistry, and precise sample analysis. His tests are interrupted by an impossible discovery. A manufactured object made from an unfamiliar, exceptionally strong metal has appeared near the ship, proving intelligent life is close. While the laboratory spins, a sensor identifies a moving object near the Hail Mary. Its controlled path and repeating signals rule out natural debris. The alien vessel moves closer and extends a structure toward the Hail Mary. Grace cautiously approaches because first contact may be dangerous, but isolation offers no better option. A sealed tunnel forms between the ships. Grace enters with a light, knowing that the atmosphere and intentions on the other side are unknown. Grace follows a small alien device through the dark connection, using its lights and movements as cautious instructions from whoever controls it. The device leads him back towards safety, then waits. Grace understands that the unseen visitors are testing whether he can follow directions without panic. A sealed bridge grows between the ships until both vessels are physically connected. Grace sees careful engineering designed to prevent either atmosphere from escaping. A new pressure-safe chamber appears at the bridge. Grace studies its gauges and unfamiliar construction while tapping sounds announce someone on the other side. Movement behind the barrier reveals an unseen visitor testing the chamber. Grace waits, answers the taps, and keeps his hands visible to show peaceful intent. Their first close encounter startles them both, but neither attacks. Rocky's suit and movements show that he is an engineer, not a monster. Grace uses drawings, numbers, and repeated gestures to establish peaceful intent. Rocky responds with rhythmic sounds and precise physical demonstrations. Rocky provides more of the miraculous material, which Grace names Xenonite. In return, Grace shares tools and begins documenting their contact. Their atmospheres are deadly to each other, so every meeting requires barriers, pressure locks, and suits. Cooperation must develop without direct touch or shared air. Mathematics becomes their common foundation. They compare counting systems, units, geometry, mass, and time until both can describe the same physical world with dependable precision. Grace discovers that Rocky's language is musical. By recording tones and matching them to meanings, he starts building a real-time translator. The two finally exchange names and basic sentences. Grace calls his partner Rocky, while the alien's musical language turns a fragile first contact into a practical scientific partnership. Rocky rapidly expands their shared vocabulary, while Grace adapts software to recognize chords, grammar, and intent. Within days, their conversations become fast enough for serious research. Grace learns that Rocky comes from Erid, navigates by sound, and built much of his ship himself. Rocky's home star is also being consumed by astrophage. Both civilizations trace the infestation to Tau Ceti. Their separate missions have the same goal, giving them a reason to trust each other. Rocky arrived with 22 crewmates, but all of them died during the voyage. He has spent years maintaining their mission, ship, and scientific work completely alone. Grace admits that he cannot remember why a schoolteacher was sent into space. Rocky treats the mystery as another problem they can solve together. Rocky is disturbed by human sleep because Iridian sleep leaves the body completely paralyzed. Trusted companions guard each other, so he insists on watching Grace. The moment triggers another memory. Yao commanded the Hail Mary, Ilyukina maintained its systems, and Dubois handled the science payload, with trained backups ready on Earth. All three accepted that the mission was one way. They trained to send the cure home, then use prepared drugs rather than die slowly from starvation. In the present, Rocky moves his workshop onto the Hail Mary. The cramped ship becomes a shared laboratory built for two incompatible species. Rocky reorganizes everything, criticizes Grace's clutter, and claims most of the available space. Their arguments sound increasingly like friendship. Rocky's extraordinary hearing lets him sense movement through walls. Grace also deduces that cosmic radiation killed the Iridian crew because their species never evolved natural protection. Together they devise a better approach. A planet orbiting Tau Ceti lies along the Petrova line, allowing them to remain near the stream and collect a longer, richer sample. During the journey, Grace shows Rocky images of beaches, forests, cities, and human life. Rocky shares stories about Erid, and their scientific alliance becomes personal friendship. Rocky's mate is named Adrian, and the pair have been together for nearly 2 centuries. Grace gives that name to the target planet as a gesture of respect. At the crew's farewell gathering, Grace and Strat step away from the crowd. He watches the condemned astronauts celebrate and struggles with the cost of her plan. Inside, Strat keeps the party moving while Grace asks whether the mission can truly succeed. She admits uncertainty because humanity has no alternative. Back in the present, the Hail Mary and Rocky's ship reach Tau Ceti. Green light fills the instruments as they prepare collectors and orbital calculations. They enter the Petrova line near Adrian, surrounded by dense clouds of astrophage. The collectors begin counting organisms while both ships hold a calculated orbit. The readings are strange. Equal numbers of astrophage enter and leave Adrian, although a breeding ground should produce far more, so something must be removing them. Microscopy reveals a second organism mixed with the sample. Grace identifies a primitive life form that hunts astrophage and keeps its population from growing. This predator explains why Tau Ceti remains bright. To save both stars, they must collect living specimens from Adrian's dangerous upper atmosphere. Rocky builds a 5-kilometer Xenonite chain with a sealed trap, sensors, and winch. Simulations show that Grace must skim the atmosphere backward with almost no margin. During the planning, Rocky learns that Grace lacks enough fuel to return to Earth. Grace has quietly accepted dying after sending the cure home in the Beetles. Rocky refuses that outcome and offers 2 million kilograms of astrophage, even though it delays his own return. Grace responds with their first awkward embrace. A brief memory shows Grace helping the original crew practice the sampler. He praises their skill while still believing they will fly without him. The real descent begins. Grace takes manual control as both ships approach Adrian's violent upper atmosphere, with Rocky monitoring the sampler and every change in the flight path. Fire and turbulence batter the Hail Mary while Rocky lowers the trap. Grace holds the impossible trajectory as alarms multiply and the hull begins to deform. The trap enters the cloud layer and closes around a living sample. Rocky begins hauling the 5-kilometer chain back, while Grace struggles to maintain altitude. A jam forces Grace outside. Despite rising heat, flying debris, and Rocky's repeated warnings, he crosses the hull and frees the mechanism by hand. The sample reaches safety, but Adrian's gravity and pressure begin tearing the vessel apart. Grace fires the engines before their orbit collapses and drags both ships upward. The escape succeeds, yet damaged fuel tanks spray astrophage toward the planet. Grace jettisons the ruptured section before the escaping energy can destroy the entire ship. After the emergency separation, damaged sections of the ship go dark and Rocky stops answering. Grace searches the wrecked passage while alarms fade into silence. The darkness unlocks a buried memory. A measuring error caused an astrophage explosion that killed Du Bois and Annie Shapiro. Strat still refused to delay the launch. She chose Grace because he knew astrophage better than anyone and possessed the rare genetic trait needed to survive the mission's long-induced coma. In the present, Grace refuses to lose Rocky. He carries the injured Iridian into a stable chamber, repairs pressure systems, and begins emergency treatment with incomplete medical knowledge. Rocky's biology is unfamiliar, so Grace improvises warmth, pressure, and constant monitoring. He stays beside the enclosure through the long silence. While Rocky remains unconscious, Grace studies the captured microbe alone, records updates for his friend, maintains both ships, and refuses to surrender to exhaustion. Grace names the organism Talmodiba and discovers that ordinary nitrogen kills it. The predator must evolve before it can survive in Venus's atmosphere and protect the sun. He uses xenonite incubators to expose generation after generation to harsher air, preserving only the strains that survive until nitrogen tolerance becomes stable. Rocky finally wakes. Grace, exhausted from research and caregiving, shows him the growing colonies of nitrogen-resistant Talmodiba. The breeding succeeds, giving both civilizations a cure. Grace and Rocky celebrate, dress for the occasion, and exchange a laptop and a model of Earth. Grace then visits Rocky's ship and sees how completely its hull depends on xenonite. The tour becomes an important clue he will remember later. One final memory reveals the truth Grace feared. When Strat ordered him to join the mission after the explosion, he refused to sacrifice his life. Strat warned that billions would die, but Grace still chose his classroom and survival. She concluded that humanity could not accept his personal refusal. Her guards drugged Grace, restrained him, and placed him aboard the Hail Mary in coma. The world would remember a volunteer, but he had been forced. Remembering his cowardice changes the farewell. Grace and Rocky call each other friends, exchange an awkward embrace, and prepare to travel toward different stars. Their ships separate, carrying Talmodiba in opposite directions. Grace finally has fuel, a route home, and a chance to survive the mission he never chose. The Hail Mary begins the 4-year journey to Earth. Alone again, Grace tries to accept the success, the forced launch, and the person he has become. An engine warning exposes a new danger. Talmodiba has evolved to escape through xenonite and has begun consuming the ship's astrophage fuel from inside its containers. Grace seals his own leak, then understands Rocky's greater risk. The Iridian ship is made almost entirely from xenonite and cannot contain the escaped predator. He loads the beetle probes with Talmodiba, complete breeding instructions, experimental records, and enough data for Earth to reproduce the cure without him. Then he launches them home. With Earth's solution secured, Grace turns the Hail Mary around. He abandons his own return and races back because Rocky must not die alone. Grace follows failing signals through debris and darkness until he reaches the silent Iridian ship. Rocky is alive, but his fuel and life support are nearly gone. Among the beetle data is Grace's final recording, introducing Rocky and explaining the cure. On Earth, the message is received as proof that the mission succeeded. Years later, Grace lives inside an Iridian habitat built for human air, gravity, food, and light. Rocky remains his closest companion, neighbor, and connection to the world outside. News arrives that Sol has returned to full brightness. Grace stays on Erid, where he teaches science to young Iridians and lives among the people he crossed the stars to save.